the conclusion is that Bhagavad Gita is a transcendental.
What did you notice?
Lots missing now.
Lots missing.
Lots of verses missing.
Lots of verses missing.
There's a lot of additions.
Excuse me?
There was lots of additions.
A lot of additions? Hmm.
In one sense.
What else did you notice?
It's pretty much like in this book.
Excuse me?
Pretty much like in this book.
Pretty much in like that book. You want to hold that book up?
Yes, please.
Pretty much like the second edition. Okay. Anything else that was noticed? Okay. So yes, the most conspicuous thing is that Srila Prabhupada quoted the verses of the Gita Mahatmya, which were all left out in the first edition. Probably because the Sanskrit editors didn't know them and didn't know where to find them, and so skipped them. So they all were deleted. It's also interesting, there's, as you say, there were additions. This is the most conspicuous one that I saw. In the beginning you hear Neha Vikram, or you see Neha Vikrama Nashosti Pratyabhayo Navidjate Swapam Apyasya Dharmasya Trayate Mahato Bhayat. In this endeavor there's no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Did you hear that on the tape?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Let's go back. I think. Let's see, just for fun, let's go back and see what we
Literature which one should read very carefully. Gita Shastramidam Punyam Japathet Pradita Puman. And the result will be, if we properly follow the instruction, then he can be freed from all miseries of life, all anxieties of life. Bhaya Shokadi Vibhajjitam. All.
What happened here is,
in that verse from Gita Mahatmya, we find Paya Shoko Vivarjitam. And the devotees didn't know that verse, as I said, but they did know a verse that had the word Paya in it. This verse from Bhagavad Gita, Trayate Mahato Bhayat. So it seems that they left out the verse they didn't know, put in a verse they did know, and put in the translation to that verse. And so that's what wound up in the first edition.
let's see what else might be interesting.
In the first edition it says he indemnifies all the reactions of sin. It should be indemnifies from all the reactions of sin, right? What's indemnify mean? It makes you blameless. So it makes all the sin, the reactions of sin, blameless. That's not right. It indemnify, like in legal work, that you sign something so that if anything happens, you're indemnified. You know, they can't sue you. So the sins, the reactions of sins are blameless here. But Prabhupada said on the tape, indemnifies from all reactions of sins. So Prabhupada had it right. The person who chants Hare Krishna or who engages in devotional service is freed from the reactions of sins. Not that the sins or reactions of sins are freed. That's not right. Let's see what else. Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada mentioned Gita Upanishad. It's just like the cow. That left out.
What about the cowboy one?
That's there. It was a cowherd boy.
No, but Prabhupada got the cowboy.
No, cowherd boy. It's the same. Cowboy can be misunderstood. So he's a cowherd boy. Let's just take a quick look. I didn't think beforehand, but why not? This is the database. Bhagavad Gita as it is. Okay. This is the same section in the second edition. Vishnu Padam Apnoti Vayashoka Vivarjita. There's also a further advantage. Gita Jayana Shilasya Pranayama Parasyacha and so on. All the verses that were left out have been put back in. Also, there's one other nice thing. The Lord says very loudly in the last portion of Bhagavad Gita, Sarvadharman Pratyaja. You heard Prabhupada say very loudly? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But that's put back in. Gita Upanishad, back in. And you must have heard at the end, one mantra, one hymn, one prayer. That's back in. So a lot's been restored. That's what's gone on in this. A few things have been corrected, something that wasn't supposed to be there has been taken out, and the things that were originally there were restored. That's fairly typical of the work that's been done for the second edition of Bhagavad Gita as it is. Critical people will say they made so many changes. And the answer is yes, we made so many changes. And we think that Srila Prabhupada would approve of such changes. I'll give you a little history. By the way, the entire introduction is available. We just played a little part of it. But the entire introduction is available in the collection of audio from the Bhaktivedanta archives. And there are other things that are fixed, but this is the most conspicuous. Little history. Prabhupada apparently wrote the Bhagavad Gita as it is during 1966 and 67. The Macmillan Company published the first abridged edition in 1968. And then, because it sold pretty well, they published the first complete unabridged edition in 1972. And then later the BBT published it. Come on in. In about 1980, at the request of various devotees and the BBT trustees, I wasn't one of them back then, I undertook a revision of the text. I consulted with Gopi Pranadhana Prabhu, our Sanskrit editor, and others for the Sanskrit revisions. And for the English, I consulted with Indra Prabhu and Garuda Prabhu and other devotees. In 1982, the GBC discussed the work and approved it, contingent on approval by a panel it appointed to review the final revisions to the translations. That panel met for several days in Detroit and refined and approved or disapproved of various changes. In 1982, I sent a list of every proposed revision for the translations to virtually all the leaders of ISKCON in the English-speaking world and asked for comments. Then in 1983, the BBT published the second edition. And in 1985, the GBC reaffirmed its endorsement of that second edition. Any questions about any of this? Okay. When I went to do the revisions, naturally I wanted to look at the original manuscripts. And I found that the manuscripts that we then had were of three kinds. The first 6 chapters, the middle 6 chapters, and the last 6 chapters were different, and I'll show you what the differences were. Let's see if I've got like that. Yeah. Yeah, that's good, thank you. Yeah. Oh, right there, but here. This is a typical page from the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita as it is. This was typed by Srila Prabhupada himself. When you see other pages in this section, you recognize right away that it's Prabhupada's typing. All the Sanskrit words are right there. There are no blank spaces. They're all spelled correctly, not necessarily according to our diacritic system, but they're the right words in the right places, and all very neatly typed in this same style. That's what the first 6 chapters look like. In chapter 7, by the time we got to chapter 7, Srila Prabhupada had received a dictaphone. My godbrother Gargamuni Prabhu had seen in a shop window a dictating machine. Actually, dictaphone is a brand name. It was a Grundig dictating machine. And he bought it on the spot, thinking, although he wasn't inclined to buy things on the spot, but he just thought, Swamiji might use this. So he right on the spot, he bought it, and the shop guy showed him all the, how to get it to work, all the things that he had to do. And he brought it back to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was happy to receive it, and Gargamuni started to show him how to use it, but he said, Prabhupada already seemed to know how to do everything. So from the 7th chapter onward, Prabhupada dictated practically all of his books. And that enabled him to go a lot faster. But the accuracy then was dependent upon the transcribers, who were not always that good. This is a page from the 7th chapter. Is it 7th chapter? Maybe 9th chapter.